Welcome, everyone, and good morning. My name is Susan Nelson, and I'm a moderator for the League of Women Voters of Duluth. We are certified and trained as moderators. On behalf of the League of Women Voters Duluth, I'd like to welcome the candidates. The forum will be presented on PACT-TV and linked to the League of Women Voters Duluth website. Feel free to share the forum with others in its entirety. The League of Women Voters Duluth posts complete unedited recordings of the forums. Editing is authorized only for official media reporting. Excerpts or edited clips of candidate forums may not be used for partisan political purposes. The League of Women Voters is pleased to present this General Issues Forum for the state representative candidates, District 8A. Thank you, candidates, for your willingness to participate in state government and in this forum. The League of Women Voters believes that an informed citizenry is the foundation of effective democracy. The League is open to membership for men and women who are interested in nonpartisan civic participation. The League of Women Voters Duluth realizes that creative and innovative policies and practices are forged out of diverse points of view. We believe diverse perspectives are necessary for responsible and representative decision-making. Let us acknowledge our commitment to welcome and facilitate diversity, equity, and inclusion in all aspects of our work. We strive to include people from a mix of abilities and backgrounds in all of our activities. And you're invited to join our membership. For information, check our website at www.lwvduluth.org. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan volunteer organization that works at the local, state, and national level to encourage citizens to participate in government. While we as a league do study and take stands on issues, we do not endorse or support political parties or candidates. The views expressed at this forum are those of the participating candidates and not those of the League of Women Voters of Duluth. Additionally, LWV sponsorship of the forum is not a league endorsement of any of the individual candidates participating. Remember to exercise your right to vote on Tuesday, November 8th, 2022. At this time, I'd like to introduce the candidates. The candidates for State Representative District A are Art Johnston and Liz Olson. Our forum will begin with the candidates giving a 2-minute opening statement, followed by the questioning round. Questions have been vetted by the League of Women Voters of Duluth committees. Candidates were not given the questions in advance. Each candidate will be given up to 1.5 minutes in which to provide their response. The questioning round has been set up so that each candidate will be asked questions in a rotating order. After the questioning is completed, each candidate will be allowed a 2-minute closing statement prior to the end of the forum. The candidates will now provide their opening statement. And we will begin with candidate Liz Olson.
Good morning. I'm Representative Liz Olson. I've had the pleasure of serving District 8B, or 7B, now will be the new 8A, for the past 6 years, and I'm running for re-election this year. I live in the Denfeld neighborhood with my family, send my kid to public school, and just really enjoy living an active life in the district that I represent. And I'm running to represent District 8A and running for re-election this time because I still believe we have a long way to go to achieve a community where everyone can thrive. Through my time in the legislature this last 6 years, I've been able to deliver meaningful results for our district, from infrastructure projects to critical funding for childcare facilities, to making sure that we have roads and bridges and cleanup in the river, to make sure that we have a quality of life here that is good and can be supportive of all of the ways that we enjoy living in Duluth. But we know there's so much more at stake, especially this election. We know that access to reproductive justice is on the ballot, that access for abortion, that protecting our democracy, doing something about gun violence. These are all top of mind issues for Minnesotans as we go to the polls. And I want to continue to work to make sure that we tackle those issues while delivering the things we need right here in our community. And so that's why I'm running and ask for people's support on November 8th.
Okay, thank you. And candidate Johnston.
Thanks for putting this on. Great to be here. I'm Mark Johnston, running for 8A as a Republican side with the ticket. I live in Smithville and enjoy Duluth, all the outdoors activity we've got, also the history in here too, and the green space that we have. And why am I running? I think it's really important that we, as a populace here in Duluth and our country, start addressing the hatred in our politics. We just see hatred, name-calling over and over again. I think everybody watching this is probably really getting tired of it. And I see that as both parties, but I think the DFL and the Democrats are a little bit worse on it. Just watch the TV, see who's in charge. Just because, though, we want to level the dysfunctionalism and the hate that we see in politics doesn't mean that we shouldn't talk about important issues. Some of the issues that I'm running on, which I think the DFL has not done very well on, is obviously inflation. The inflationary policies of the DFL and the state, as well as nationwide, is really unacceptable. Anybody's put gas in the tank, no, you're paying $70. Price of gas has went up 70% in the last 2 years. It really is not acceptable. Price of food is up 13%. Price of lumber is up 50%, and it's just really not acceptable. We really have to get a little bit of control on that. One way we do it is to change the policies of the DFL so we, one, start encouraging energy production to come into our area, and also encourage our mining. We can do this from environmentally sound as well as supporting union jobs.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, I've got to change my timer here. All right, now we'll move to those questions that were solicited and submitted by the organizing committee, and each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond. And we'll go in alternating order. So we'll begin the first question. The first question will be to Art Johnston first. And the question is on health care. What steps can be taken to increase Minnesotans' access to affordable health care?
We have, in Duluth, we have world-class health organizations here. I think that we have to make sure that people can, one, get transportation to get here, one, feel safe to be here. Right now, I think the downtown, sometimes people are actually afraid to come to our health facilities because of some of the crime on our downtown streets. That is one thing we have to do. We have to make sure that people know what if you're older, you have Medicare that people get. We have to make sure that people understand where they can get aid if they do not have the resources to do. One thing about our system is nobody is turned away because of financial needs, and I think we have to make sure that that continues.
Okay, thank you. And candidate Olson.
Affordable health care is top of mind, I think, to most Minnesotans. And Minnesota has been a leader in health care for such a long time, but we still have so much further to go in terms of the cost of health care. There are Minnesotans that go bankrupt because they can't afford the cost of care. We still, despite having essentially public or nonprofit healthcare providers in terms of insurers, we still know that there are profits that are made off of our healthcare systems. And so we need to address the costs, we need to address access, and we need to make sure that we have a high quality workforce that's providing that care and supporting that we make sure we have workers in the pipeline and that we have retention of the dedicated healthcare professionals we have in all settings of healthcare. And that means mental health care. We know that there's a lack of access, in particular in greater Minnesota, and for mental health care for youth. And that's something that we can do. And this session, I actually worked with a group of bipartisan legislators to help deliver a substantial package around mental health care that is paving the way now in our community and throughout the state. We also can and should do more around prescription drug costs. In the Minnesota House, we led a bill around making insulin affordable and capping the price that anyone would pay in the state of Minnesota for insulin. And so we can build off that legislation to make sure people can afford mental health care, they can go to the doctor without going bankrupt, and they can afford their prescription drugs.
Thank you. For question 2, we'll begin with candidate Olson. It's on education. What should the legislature's role, if any, be in determining school curriculum and what is taught in classrooms throughout the state?
I think that as a legislative body, that's not what we are not experts in. There's already a set of people that deliberate what should be taught in the schools and how that are those professionals. There's people in the classrooms, there's the local school boards, the local administration. There are a whole bunch of folks that really already work on that with the Department of Education, experts that help design what should be taught in classrooms that's age appropriate, that helps meet standards for what they need to be met in the classroom. And it's not ours. We've seen this whole discussion around what should be taught and trying to take things out of classrooms that need to be there to educate students so that they're ready to see the world for what it is, or this fear-mongering of what's being taught to our kids that it just isn't true. And so it has become such a politicized piece that I know Art had mentioned that that's happening, and we've seen that fear-mongering being used about what's being taught or not taught in our classrooms. And we know that there are professionals whose jobs that it is to look at this and have that developmental appropriate curriculum, and that is not the role of the legislature.
Okay, thank you. And candidate Johnston.
Thank you. I was on the Duluth School Board for 8 years. Many of you probably remember me on that. I think the legislature really does have to take a role in this. We can't just say that, the experts are doing this. We've heard that too much in our country, that experts decide to make all our decisions. That shouldn't be the case. I go around, since I was on the school board, I now literally on the speaking circuit. I go around and talk to many school groups, parent groups, and student groups around the state, including out of state. And I think we all know that there's a lot of concern from parents about what's going on at our schools. All you got to do is look up the New York Times or anything else, you'll see that there's a lot of dysfunctionalism going on in our schools. There's a lot of distrust. It's time that we build that trust back. We have to look at our curriculum. We just can't say that, the parents don't have any right on that. Of course, parents do, as does the legislature. We do have to look at the racism that is being taught in school. It goes on the Duluth website. You can find out what's going on. We really have to address that issue. And it's time that we give parents choice in their education. It's time that they have a complete say. The school boards have to be opened up. We know the school boards in Duluth and across Minnesota are not open to a discussion from the public, and we have to change that. And I will do everything I can to make sure that school boards are accountable to the public.
Thank you. We'll move on to question 3, and the first respondent there will be candidate Johnston. This one is on the environment. With respect to mining, how do you approach the balance of resource use and environmental protections?
Thank you. This is something that's been dear in my heart. I've been an environmentalist most of my life. In fact, I lived off the grid for 15 years before I moved to Duluth, one of my better moments of life. Also, as a professional engineer, I've done many energy analyses throughout the country, actually. I worked for the federal government for 20 years, did carbon footprint analysis as far as indoor air quality, and as well as looking at historical buildings. It is absolutely critical that we use our resources wisely, and wisely, both from an environmental point of view, as well as when we need it. I think we do have to trust people that are looking at the analysis on what's going on. If we can mine safely. We can mine by protecting the environment. We have to do it. I think it's absolutely critical. For example, in mining, we all have our smartphones here, right? And I think most of you have probably driven in your car today. If we do not have access to resources, those things are not going to happen. We have to take responsibility for our actions. We have to do it. Most important, just as important, I should say, not most important, is mining gives very good high-paying jobs. Duluth has a history of mining. We're a port on the lake. We have to utilize those for the good of our own community as well as for the good of our country and our state.
Thank you. And the same question to candidate Olson.
And I think the question was around just mining in general, is that correct? Just to repeat
It's
that.
how do you approach the balance of resource use and environmental protections?
Okay, great. So in regards to at the legislature and through the state, we have a set of processes that in order for new mines to open, that they must meet those standards. And I support those standards in using every tool at our disposal to make sure that any new mines that go online, we're doing it right, because we only get one chance to do it right, and I believe corporations are responsible to our people and they're responsible to our land, and that is full stop. And as the state representative who has the St. Louis River estuary in my district and has represented that area for the last 6 years, the amount of resources we have had to devote from the state to just the legacy pollution for years and years past, that is not something we can continue to do or take a chance on. We're still cleaning up from decades ago of pollution, and so we need to make sure anything we do it right, and we do it to the highest standards possible, and we use every tool at our disposal we have here in Minnesota to do that and to make sure that we have it so that we get it right.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next question will begin with candidate Olson, and it's on the local economy. What are the most important things that should be done to improve the region's economy?
It's a great question, and I find myself, I go to the experts. So if it's something around small businesses, I talk to small businesses about what they need. If it's around workforce, I talk to the folks at the Workforce Center. And so what I hear time and time again is we all know that we are in a tight labor economy where it's hard to find workers, and there are reasons for that, and that is kind of the number one thing right now I hear from people is the support they need to stay open and have the workforce that they need. And in order to do that, I hear a lot about childcare and I hear a lot about housing. In Duluth in particular, that we need to make sure we're supporting families to be able to have the resources they need, to whether it's to operate their own business, in order to have the workers they need, whatever it might be, that we need to be able to provide those resources and have benefits for workers too. We see with the growing unions and the strength of the worker right now that they're demanding that they have wages that support their families, that they have benefits like earned sick and safe time and paid family and medical leave. And those are the kinds of things we can do to have a really healthy workforce and a booming economy, and that we're supporting those businesses in our community that help make all of that possible. And again, I hear time and time again that we need to really do something serious about childcare in northeastern Minnesota and make sure that we're investing in housing.
Okay, thank you. And Representative Johnston.
The local economy is very important. I'll start off by talking about what's happened the last few years. The DFL lockdowns were a disaster throughout the state, and they kept them on over and over again. We now know, we all see us all, we're not wearing masks anymore. Back 2 years ago in Duluth, the main street, all the streets were literally empty. What did that do us? I don't think it did us any good at all. The emergency powers from the government was a massive government overreach, which was really hard for the economy. Let's talk about specifically Duluth a little bit. You talk to any of the construction people, I'm an engineer, I'm in the construction industry all the time. You talk to anybody, they say how difficult it is to get permits in Duluth, how difficult it is just to go out and just to try to build something. There's just way too many hoops that you have to jump through. I think it's time that we, although as representatives, we will not be part of those decisions. It's a local decision, but I think it's really important that we push back and say we have to deregulate some of the policies that we have going on in Duluth so people actually can build something. We know we have a housing problem in Duluth. Our housing is old. We have to make it so people can go out and build houses without jumping through many hoops and taking 6 months or a year just to get a permit, not to mention the construction people.
Thank you. Our next question will go first to candidate Johnston, and it's on reproductive health. Given the recent Supreme Court ruling regarding Roe v. Wade, state legislatures may be enacting new laws regarding reproductive health issues, including access to care. What measures, if any, do you think the Minnesota legislature should enact regarding reproductive health?
The reproductive health issue is, I think it's a non-issue in Minnesota. Minnesota now, all the states now are in charge of their own laws and everything on reproductive health. Minnesota does have abortion rights as part of our Constitution. I don't think that should be brought up. I'm hoping that it does not come up. It's an ugly issue where a lot of people argue over, and I think that is something that we don't need in this state, and I hope that it does not come up. It's settled now in Minnesota what we have now, and let's go with what we have.
Okay, and candidate Olson.
I fully support expanding access to reproductive health care for all and making sure that abortion stays safe and legal in Minnesota, and to codify Roe v. Wade so that we're not in a situation where Minnesota can put further restrictions. And to say it's not on the ballot is unbelievably false. When I watched my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, GOP members for the last 6 years, introduce Texas-style abortion bans, put numerous onerous restrictions on what's already happening in Minnesota. We have already done enough to restrict it while still keeping it legal, and we need to go the opposite direction. And that's why it very much is on the ballot, and we've watched what would happen if our chamber or our governor were to change hands. We know that there are already these bills introduced that are written by Republicans right in Minnesota that are chomping at the bit to restrict and ban, and I believe we need to go in the opposite direction to make sure that we don't walk back any access to safe and affordable abortions for all.
Thank you. All right, our next question will go first to candidate Olson, and it's on gun safety. Minnesota's gun death rate has risen 13% last year over 2020's death rate and 32% over 2019, according to the Minnesota Department of Health. Suicide accounts for 68% of gun deaths in Minnesota. What will you do as a legislator to address this public health epidemic?
Absolutely. I think this is, again, top of mind for everybody. It impacts all of us in our community here. It has in very personal ways and in very communal ways. We've seen gun violence and the impact it's had here and across our nation. I am co-author on 2 pieces of legislation that directly address gun violence prevention. One is red flags, to make sure that people who are a threat to themselves or others don't have access to firearms, with due process, of course. And that would help for both reasons, whether it's someone going through their own mental health crisis and being a threat to themselves or the potential to harm others. The other is that we're closing loopholes, that we're doing more with the background checks and the loopholes there, and closing that so that people that shouldn't have guns don't have guns. The other thing is we need to make sure that we're safely locking up firearms so that people in the home shouldn't have easy access to them, especially that we need to make sure that we're safely storing firearms so that children don't have access to them for accidental deaths in the family. And so the gun access is absolutely true and real, especially for people going through a mental health crisis. And you mentioned suicide, and that not only having the access to firearms, but having the mental health supports people need when they're in those crises as well.
Thank you. And candidate Johnston on gun safety.
I think the the whole crime issue, including guns, is a reflection of our society. Our society, I think, is out of control right now. In my opening statement, I talked about the hatred that passes off as politics now. I think that is filtered right down to people, and I think we have to have leadership that is not afraid to tell their party to quit doing that. Let's treat our people with respect. If our political leaders treat each other with respect, I think that will filter down to the people. More specifically about violence, I think it's important that we enforce the laws we have. It's important, I think, that we've seen the violence that we've seen. Luckily, not too much in Duluth here yet, at least. But we do have to have a strong police force. The police force have to have laws that are there. The guns laws that are there have to be enforced. We already have gun laws. We just have to enforce those laws. And we have to, when there's civil disobedience going on, as we've had quite a bit across the state, we see guns on both sides of the political aisle, and I see that's very, very sad. But I think we have to try to cut that back, lower the rhetoric that's going on both sides, and we have to expect people to be good citizens, and if they don't, we have to use the law to force them to take action against criminal activity.
Thank you. For our next question, we'll begin with candidate Johnston, and we're switching over to infrastructure. What infrastructure plans would you like to see advanced for our region, and why?
That's infrastructure is so important. It's a big part of our economy. A lot of our labor jobs depend on infrastructure. And as a structural engineer, I'm involved in a lot of those projects myself. I think it's very important. We see a lot of good projects going on right now in Duluth. We see the freeways that are being built. We have to know that all of this infrastructure takes resources and energy. So first of all, I want to say again, we cannot we can't be rebuilding our freeways and building anything new without having ready access to energy, oil, fossil fuels. Remember, concrete is the highest carbon footprint intensive building material we use. It takes a lot of energy to make it, and so we have to make sure we have affordable energy coming into making sure our construction companies can actually get these and taxpayers can afford to pay for them. I think we have to keep going. We have to keep building our roads. We know our roads in Duluth are not very well. We know some of the tunnel systems that keeps the water out into Lake Superior. The consent decree must be continually we have to upgrade that infrastructure to keep pollution out of Lake Superior, and that's ongoing. We're doing a good job on it, but we have a long way to go yet.
Thank you. And candidate Olson on infrastructure.
The infrastructure, and I think that ties back to the question too about the local economy from earlier, is one of the best things we could do for both is to pass a robust bonding bill, which is the largest vehicle for infrastructure investment and a great tool we have at the state. And so we have been pushing for that, and on the House DFL caucus, we would gladly go back for a special session to get that done now, so that we could get people out working, we could be investing in communities in this infrastructure, and that's the roads, the bridges, everything we know is true as we drive around Duluth right now and we see what's happening with the 21st Avenue West Bridge and all of the infrastructure there. We know that there's going to be big investments in the bridge going to Superior coming, and that takes dedicated ongoing revenue too, that we make sure that we're not just putting forward projects, but that we're putting forward the investments we need as a state to be able to pay for these and maintain them in future years. And beyond just the infrastructure, when we think of roads and bridges, another key part is our water infrastructure. We know that Duluth has major issues with lead in the pipes, and that we need to do a lot to change the way people are getting their water, and that's going to take serious investment to replace those pipes. And so that's a big part of investment too, and we can leverage the dollars that were available through the federal government by passing a bonding bill and getting these projects going and leveraging those funds to start some of that lead lead water pipe replacement.
Thank you. For the next question, we'll begin with candidate Olson, and it's on education again. Should any post-secondary education be free? Why or why not?
Definitely. I think we have beyond, the medical debt that I hear about. The number one thing I hear from people in my district when talking about what's holding them back is student loan debt. Is that I hear it from families who are not buying homes because they want to pay down their debt. They're waiting to have children because they want to pay down their debt. And so I think we absolutely need to do something about making sure that we have affordable secondary education that is low or no cost to people. And we need to be thinking about where people, the options are, people, in terms of getting into the trades, other pipelines, that we have the ability to support people no matter what their decision is for where to go after they graduate high school. And so if the option is to move forward into higher education, that people aren't having to take out these astronomical loans that take decades and decades to pay back. That's not going to work. It's not going to help our economy. It's not going to help families. It's not going to help anything. And we absolutely, and at the state, we can do that. I know we've had bills in front of us, and we've passed some of that off the House floor to be capping, freezing, or providing some no-cost tuition for students in Minnesota. So there's a path there, and I hope we can work with our federal government to do more, because it's really going to take all of us so that we don't have students that are graduating with this crippling debt well into their middle parts of their lives.
Thank you. And candidate Johnston, should any post-secondary education be free? Why or why not?
We have to look at the budget. The state budget, approximately 45% of the money currently goes to K-12 education. If you're going to expand in any extent to post-secondary education, where is that money going to come from? It will most likely come from the K-12 system. So I think we have to really be careful when we're going to talk about that. I think also whenever we talk about post-secondary paying for that, what are we paying? What are we talking about? One, if we're going to do one thing, we have to make sure the vocational schools are also part of that, as well as the university and the state college system. And I think that I think we have to really look at that really, really closely. I think we also have to look at what kind of jobs are these universities putting out. We see the vocational schools, the trade schools, I think, are really what we have to be emphasizing. Most of those people coming out of that are having very good paying union jobs. And I think we have to really advocate that people that are coming out of school are getting paid. We have to look at the infrastructure of the universities themselves. Why is the university so expensive nowadays? I think that has to be looked at as well as just not throwing more money at the universities. We have to look at where is that money going.
Thank you. For our next question, we'll begin again with candidate Johnston, and it's another environmental question. Do you support the Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior Chippewas' opposition to Polymet? Please explain your answer.
No, I don't support it. And that's a big difference between me and the DFL. Polymet is, as I've said before, we have rare materials. Everything you use on your phone, your computers, or electricity, it comes from mines like Polymet. I think it's absolutely critical that we move forward. Polymet has got, I believe, every study that's been done, everything they've thrown at them, they have went through, and they've gotten permits. And I think that we have to allow Polymet to go forward, not just for Polymet, but for all of us. These are bringing materials for our country, for our state, and we can benefit them a lot from our city. We have to do them, of course, in environmentally sound ways. I certainly support the Fond du Lac tribe in wanting environmental soundness, but you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, which is what a lot of people are proposing. That's what the DFL wants to do. And no, we have to support our money. We have to support union jobs. We have to support environmental protection. We can't afford as a country to say that, let's just throw out all our mines, including Polymet. We have to keep that going. It's critical for our city and our country.
Thank you. And candidate Olson.
Do I support their decision? Absolutely, and I support it for less about the content, but the process. It's about tribal sovereignty, that if you support, that's the right to govern one's own communities, to make decisions for themselves. So whether or not I even agree with their conclusion, their decision is their decision and doing what's right, and that is about tribal sovereignty, and I absolutely respect tribal sovereignty, and I think we have all worked incredibly hard to have those relationships that really honor that as government to government relationships, and that is the way we conduct our business. And so I absolutely support the decisions they make for their community, about their community, because that is what it means as a state legislator to respect tribal sovereignty.
Okay, thank you. And the next question will go first to candidate Olson on infrastructure. How can we be sure that all Minnesotans have access to the reliable broadband needed for business and schooling?
Absolutely. Broadband is such a critical issue across our state, right here in our own community and rural areas, and it's access to school, to communicate with people in a digital age. We rode out a pandemic with one of my colleagues, Representative Eklund, who was up in International Falls, who didn't even have reliable internet to be able to conduct house business, and he was also not surprisingly, our champion for broadband. And so on the House side, we have continued to push for investments in broadband so that we have corner to corner state that everybody has access, because it's an equity issue too, that communities of color, rural communities are disconnected in ways that you need to be connected in order to get by and get through your day. And so we have put forward substantial investments that are what communities are asking for to support the investments, whether being able to partner with state or city or other local governments as they're making these investments. So at the state, we absolutely have a role in making sure that we're all connected.
Thank you. And candidate Johnston.
It's very important that we have equal access to any digital platform between cities and rural areas. Even though we represent urban area, I think we have to make sure that our rural neighbors have access to it as well. But there's another aspect which a lot of people don't talk about, is we also have to have equipment to use that. When I was on the school board, and I think we've seen that during the COVID things, when the schools were trying to educate kids via the web, which did not work very good, incidentally, for reasons, not technological reasons, but for systemic reasons of what was going on in the education system, is that a lot of the kids do not have home computers even. So people have to be able to have affordable computers. If they don't, we have to have another system. We just can't totally rely on a digital system when so many of our people don't even have access or don't know how to use those digital systems. And the school was really a problem. So it isn't just broadband, it's getting people access to this equipment. And of course, by having that affordable, by right now things are so expensive, including our electricity and our mines that want to do it. All this stuff takes mining and resources, and we have to support that as well.
Thank you. And we'll turn to you next for our next question. It's on leadership. How do you define leadership, and what skills do you have that will make you an effective legislator?
I think, as my opening statement was, I think the leadership we're lacking in this country. I mean, it's severely lacking. All you got to do is watch ugly TV. I don't care what side you're on, it's just ugly. And where's the leadership there? They all want to get on there and get their little sound bites and talk about how the other side is the bad boys and girls. Well, we have to go beyond that. I'd really like to see somebody talk about that. What leadership skills do I have? I'm a walk-away Democrat. I got out of the DFL party because it was just too nasty. And here I am. I think we have to have people like myself who've been in both parties, that we can talk to people. I have many, and most of my friends are DFLers. And I respect them enormously, and of course the friends that are mine also respect me. I think we have to be able to reach outside of our comfort zone and talk to people. Don't call them names, We actually have to talk to them and find out what it is. I'm really tired of the name calling, and name calling is not leadership. Leadership is going out there and talking to people and really seeing what makes them tick, what do they need, how can we make the world better for them, for their children, for our future. That's what leadership is.
Thank you. And the leadership question to candidate Olson.
When I see leaders, I think about people I admire, and I think about they have vision, they have heart, and they bring people with them. They're collaborators, and they really genuinely listen to people and the needs that they have and invite people to come with them to shape that vision and to arrive there together. And I think that is what it means to be a state representative. Everybody has a voice. The 40,000 people in District 8A all have voices. My job as a representative is to hear those voices and amplify them and act on them. And I see a leader as someone who can take those 40,000 voices, those diverse needs of the community, and can shape it into something that gets us to a state where everyone can thrive and live happy, healthy lives. And so I see that I have that skill because of the work I've done over the last 6 years. I am a deeply relational person. I work with people on both sides of the aisle. I don't compromise on my values or the values of those in the district, but I work closely with people to deliver the results we need for our community. And that means being in genuine relationship, being curious about people, knowing their stories. And that's true of the people in my district, and that's true of the people I work with every day at the Capitol. And I don't do the work alone. I want to be a part of teams, and I want to be challenged and to work with people throughout the community to deliver these results. So I feel I have been elected in leadership roles in my own caucus. People see me as a leader. Other colleagues on the other side of the aisle work closely with me because they know I can deliver. And so I believe that's true leadership, and I look forward to continuing to bring that forward for District 8A.
Thank you. For our last question, I'd like to ask first candidate Olson to discuss a topic of your choice that you would like voters to hear about that we haven't mentioned yet.
Okay. A topic of my choice that, sure. So I think what I will talk about is something that is that comes to mind as I sit here at the League of Women Voters Forum. I greatly appreciate that the League has a history of educating and engaging people around voting and elections and making sure our elections are fair and clean and well run, and that we have an educated electorate to make these decisions. And so for that, I also think we need to work to protect our democracy and strengthen it. We have seen what's happened with January 6th, with election results being challenged, with election results being denied. That is a scary time to live in as a nation, and it's not only just happening in DC, it's happening right here in our own backyard too. And so I think we need to be really mindful of what we need to do to protect and strengthen our democracy and make sure more people are engaged and participating, and that we're making it easier to participate in our democracy. That we need to make sure that there's automatic voter registration, that people have the ability that we could have paid election day off, that we could use all of the tools at our disposal to make sure that people can participate in our democracy. We have one of the most well-run states in terms of elections, and we need to continue to make sure that's true by keeping people engaged in our democracy and saying that these elections are fair, that they're well run, and that they're results we can stand by, because this is what we're built on. And I think in Minnesota we have a particular pride and a high voter turnout for that reason.
Thank you. And candidate Johnston, a topic of your choice.
I'll talk a little bit about elections too. I think it's very important, first of all, that we don't have high voter turnout in Duluth. For example, school boards and city council in the last election, we had 22% voter turnout. We have to move these elections back to when they're on the national, when we have national elections and state elections. They can't be an off years like they do right now, intentionally done to decrease voter turnout. So we have to do that. Another thing that we have to look at is that the DFL supports in the legislature, and I worked hard to change that. There's actually a law there that allows a school board to literally kick off one of their members with a simple majority vote, So we have to change that law so school board members are actually members, elected members of our community in full standing. They're not just somebody that can be kicked off the board when somebody doesn't like them. I'll talk about one other topic too we haven't mentioned yet, is I'll talk about the energy thing. One, we have to support the energy, the coal, or the natural gas plant in Superior, the DeMaggi Trail plant, the Keystone Pipeline has to go. We need to have energy, which is for us citizens, to make our lives better, to make our world a better place, a more comfortable place, so we can use medical care, so we can have access to transportation. So those are the two things. One, yes, we do have to strengthen our election system, and two, we have to strengthen our energy economy, and we can do that.
Thank you. All right. That concludes the prepared questions section of our forum today. And at this time, we'll ask each candidate to give a 2-minute closing statement, and we'll go in reverse order from the initial opening statements. And so we'll begin with candidate Johnston.
Okay, well, thank you. Again, I want to thank the forum here. This is really good. I wish we had a lot more forums. I wish we had a lot more media coverage on elections. But we were here, so thank you, and thank you for all the viewers here to take your time to learn about the candidates. I'm going to say again, I'm going to repeat what I did. I think that we really have to tone down the rhetoric, the partisan rhetoric that's going on there. And I've already said here, and I will say it again, I'm a walkaway Democrat. I can talk to both sides, and I think that we really have to start talking to each other. And I look forward to doing that, because I don't see it happening. Obviously, all you got to do is look to watch the TV or the newspapers, and you see that there's a lot of name calling going on out there, and I just don't like it. Doesn't mean we don't. That doesn't mean we're going to agree on things. And I will talk again. Our biggest things is the inflation, the DFL and the National Democrats. Inflation is out of control, the highest we've had in 50 years. We don't see any sign of that going down. Why? Because of the Democratic policies that have been implemented. We have to get rid of those policies. We have to start energy production going. We have to get our minings going. That not only gives resources to us, citizens, that actually use this energy, that are part of our society, and not kowtow to special interest groups. We know that, I know my opponent is a speaker in the Sierra Club frequently. These people that are controlled in San Francisco do not have a right. The DFL is actually enabling them to do that. It's the same with the Democratic Socialists in our city. All those people want to stop mining. They want to stop energy production. They blame the U.S. for the Putin's invasion of Ukraine. I don't think those represent Duluth values, and I think I represent those values better.
Thank you. And a closing statement from candidate Olson.
Thank you to the League for hosting this and doing all that you do, and to the viewers for tuning in at home. And so, yes, I'll just reiterate that I deeply love representing the district that I have, which is from Central to West Duluth, and I would be honored to continue to represent that in the upcoming legislative session and beyond. I care deeply about our community, and that's what grounds me and roots me and brings me to the kind of issues I work on. I work on affordable childcare, around housing, around infrastructure, around worker protections and worker benefits, and ending homelessness, because these are the priorities of our community, which in turn then are my priorities. And so I continue to be grounded in those values and those voices of the 40,000, continue to work hard for the district and take nothing for granted, making sure I'm out at the doors talking to people about their pressing issues so that I understand the community. I say this is my way of loving my community, is to do this work, and it would be an honor to continue to do this work, and I hope I can count on your support on November 8th.
Okay, thank you. And this concludes our candidate forum for State Representative District 8A. It's our purpose in sponsoring meetings such as this to provide you with an opportunity to hear candidates discuss the issues that are important to you. There's never enough time to cover all of the issues in a limited time setting such as this. So if your questions were not addressed, you should feel free to contact the candidates directly. We hope this program has helped you learn more about the candidates and the issues so that you can make informed choices at the polls on Tuesday, November 8th. We thank the candidates, PACT-TV, and you for making this event possible. PACT-TV will broadcast this forum and others. Check their listing for a schedule of times. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
great to
you.
be here.